Well, today it's the endocrine system, and we're talking about chemical signals and hormones, local regulators. I want to show you a picture of all of the endocrine glands in the human body, and then give you an example of a negative feedback system that involves the pancreas and insulin. So let's get started. I am on page 26 in your packet, and let's start off talking about chemical signals. These are hormones that carry messages, information through the blood, whereas a local regulator is going to send a message directly to a neighboring cell. A local regulator also will only affect whatever its target cell is. Now, there are some different types of local regulators. The first one is a growth factor. These are proteins that stimulate cells to grow, to divide, to develop. There's also nitric oxide is another type of local regulator. This is a substance produced by many cells. From white blood cells, it can kill bacteria and cancer cells that are found in body fluids. So a white blood cell that releases nitric oxide, that's what it does. It goes to kill bacteria. Nitric oxide that comes from a neuron or a nerve cell can function as a neurotransmitter, which helps to transmit messages to different parts of the body. When it comes from a blood vessel, it helps them to relax and dilate and open them up so that blood can flow freely through them. And the last type of local regulator is a prostaglandin. And a prostaglandin comes from lipids. The prostate gland releases a prostaglandin, releases it into the semen mixture, which stimulates the female uterus to contract, and it actually helps the sperm get through the uterus. It has a better chance of reaching the egg. The placenta is a structure that will release prostaglandin, and the purpose of it there is to help induce labor by stimulating the uterus. This is an example of a positive feedback loop. I'll talk about a negative feedback loop in a minute. This is a positive feedback loop. The placenta releases the prostaglandin and it triggers a contraction, and then that contraction triggers the release of more prostaglandin, which means another contraction, which means more prostaglandin, and it just keeps going and going. And that's why it's a positive feedback, because it just keeps promoting those contractions. It doesn't turn them off until after all of the labor is done and the baby is born. And the last thing I need you to know here is that your defense system, so your immune system, will release a prostaglandin in order to induce a fever. When you get a cut and you experience inflammation, a cut or any kind of trauma to a part of your body, and you are experiencing inflammation, redness, swollen, maybe itchy, that's because of prostaglandin. And anytime you feel pain when you're injured, that's because of prostaglandin too. Pain is good, but you need to feel pain in your body so that you know you have to stop doing something so that you don't make any injury worse. Now, the diagram that I have here, we need to go through and label all the different glands from the endocrine system. I'm going to start up in the brain with the hypothalamus gland. And the hypothalamus and the pituitary are really close together. And on my picture, they're both in yellow. The hypothalamus is right here. It's right above the pituitary. I'm going to use a different color for pituitary. That would be right there. This is the pituitary gland. Oops, that should be a Y. On the other side, I'm going to put, this is the pineal gland. Right in the throat area, we have the thyroid and the parathyroid. So on my picture, the purple area is the thyroid. And then those little yellow dots that are on the thyroid, those are the parathyroid glands. We also need to be familiar with the thymus. These are the kidneys here. I'm not going to label the kidney, but I do need you to know that this is the adrenal gland. We have a pancreas. And this person is very interesting because they have both ovaries and testes. Okay. On the next page in your packet is a picture of a negative feedback loop. Now, if you look very carefully at your picture, I think your arrows, your whole diagram might be going in a different direction than the one I have up here. So when you are labeling it, be careful you're going in the right direction. See these two arrows here that I have? If you look at your paper, they're going in the opposite direction. So somehow that got flipped around. I'm going to start talking right here where it says the blood glucose level is going to decline. So let's start here in my blue bubble, my blue square. But on your paper, that would actually be on the right-hand side on top of the diagram. So it's that your top circle is flipped compared to mine. So if the glucose level in your blood is going to decrease, that's going to bring it back to homeostasis according to the diagram. So in your diagram, right in the middle of the paper, this is where normal glucose level is. After you eat, so now on your diagram, this is on the left side of it, after you eat a meal, your blood glucose level is going to rise. When that happens, the beta cells in your pancreas are going to release insulin into the blood, and I'm showing some insulin here. From there, two things are going to happen. The cells in your body are going to now take up more glucose from the material running through the blood. The other thing that could happen is that the liver is going to take up glucose from the blood, and it's going to hold on to it, and it's going to store it as glycogen. So both of those things happening brings the blood glucose level down and brings it back to normal, brings it back to homeostasis. Now, if we consider the bottom part of the diagram, well, what if rather than being normal and at homeostasis, you skip a meal? What if you don't eat? What if you don't have those carbs or the extra snack in your body? Well, in that case, what's going to happen is that different cells of the pancreas, so now we're talking the alpha cells in the pancreas, are going to release glucagon into the blood. And when they release glucagon into the blood, that glucagon will signal to the liver, and it will say, hey, you need to break down the glycogen, that glycogen that you were storing, you need to break that down and release it as glucose back into the blood. And when the liver does that, the blood glucose level goes back up and goes back to normal. So not only is the pancreas involved in controlling the blood sugar level of your body, but the liver is also involved in this process too, and that's not something that we discussed in living environment. Ultimately, we need to be around the same level for blood glucose. And whether you are eating or whether you're skipping food, the blood glucose is determined. The blood glucose is regulated by both the pancreas and the help of the liver. For the next class, we're going to be getting in more depth about all the different hormones and what they do and where they're secreted and what they are regulated by. So that's the next class. And I hope this helps.